Good afternoon. Welcome to Unity of Houston. We are so proud to be sponsoring with our Healing the Heart of America leadership and our Unity in the Community leadership, a combined program of getting us ready for the vote and getting us ready and informed with everything. So I just want you to know that it looks like we're all homebodies here, but in the case you don't know me, I am Karen Tudor. I'm the Senior Associate here at Unity of Houston, and we're so glad to welcome you to this afternoon. We at Unity believe that it is our responsibility to put feet to our prayers, and this afternoon's forum is just such an effort. We hope to shine a nonpartisan light on the issues in this midterm election and bring clarity to the voting process itself. We'd like to ask you to silence your cell phones so we don't have any disturbance throughout. And please note that if you are new to this building, the restrooms are through these doors all the way down the hallway to the very end. You'll find the restrooms there. We're so pleased to have Spanish-speaking friends and neighbors with us today. And during the forum, we will be offering real-time translation. Beatriz Schreiber will be doing the translation, and Beatriz will join me here on stage and let you know that we will be using freeconferencecall.com. And Beatriz will explain to Spanish speakers how they can get online. We have it also, I think, on the slide, if our slide is still showing. Beatriz? Beatriz, would you come up here to the microphone?
Oh, that's right.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Beatriz Schreiber y estoy muy contenta de poder ayudar y proporcionar la traducción del inglés al español para las personas de habla hispana. Y yo quisiera pedirles desde un principio que por favor pongan su teléfono en silencio. Lo vamos a hacer a través de... ¿Dónde está? Ok, vamos a usar un servicio que a lo mejor ustedes están familiarizados con él, que se llama freeconference.com. Entonces, lo que se hace, vamos a poner, se marca el teléfono, les van a pedir un password, o sea, una clave, y cuando la tengan, entonces también inmediatamente les van a preguntar algo. Las personas que hablan español probablemente no sepan lo que les están preguntando. Entonces, a esa pregunta lo que tienen que hacer es poner en su teléfono el signo de número. Y también les vamos a pedir que pongan su teléfono en silencio, no solamente en silencio, sino que en el mismo teléfono pongan donde está el microfonito para que no haya interferencia.
Gracias.
Ajá.
Gracias, Beatriz.
Por nada.
I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Nancy Sims. Nancy is recognized by the media for her critical insights and political analysis. She currently serves as one of the analysts for KUHF Radio, NPR Houston, and is a regular on Houston Matters. Nancy also serves as a lecturer in political science at the University of Houston. She teaches women in politics as well as political engagement classes. We know she'll bring insight and possibly provocative questions to us this afternoon. Welcome, Nancy.
Does it need turning on there? It's on? There we go. Good. All right. Thank you so much. I was asked to talk to you about the 2022 elections in Texas. What elections? Oh, yeah, I think there's a couple of races we might want to pay attention to. I guess my sad point is that there are very few contested races in Texas this year. And what do I mean by contested? Well, let me tell you that no member of Congress, other than an open seat, is going to change. So everyone in the Houston area that you know of today is going to get reelected because our redistricting has defined competition. So even though Sheila Jackson Lee may have a Republican opponent, I mean, it could be Jesus Christ and he couldn't beat her the way the district's drawn. So I don't mean to offend, but that is honestly the case. It's also the case that we could have Jesus running as a Democrat against Dan Crenshaw, and he's going to win. There's just no numerical challenges. So none of the congressional races in Houston are contested, are vehemently contested. Someone said, now come on, what about Wesley Hunt and that new district? And I said, yes. Did you have a question about that? I think you could call him Congressman Hunt. And then they asked me about Morgan Luttrell up in the Woodlands where Kevin Brady resigned. And I said, I think you can call him Congressman Luttrell. There's just no competition. So even if there are people running against them, there's no competition. And what is that affecting from our perspective? It's true of the state house and the state senate as well. In all of Houston, we have no hotly contested state rep or state senator races. Think about that, y'all. These are the neighborhood races, the things that spur people to get out and vote. So you've no contested congressional races, let me rephrase it, no competitive congressional races, no competitive state rep races, and no competitive state senate races. These are the people that work neighborhoods and turn them out to vote. You follow me? So I want to put you in this picture so that when we talk about Abbott and O'Rourke, you understand when I say the race 100% depends on voter turnout. Which, by the way, we've made the state so not competitive, while my friends in the elections office have high hopes for voter turnout. I don't. There's nothing to bring people out to vote except their anger. So who's angrier than the other? That's what we're boiling down to. And I got to tell you right now, the Republicans are angrier. So any hopes you have of seeing change in Texas, it isn't looking real good statewide, okay? Hate to be a bummer. But right now, I would say the governor's race, the lieutenant governor's race, and the attorney general's race, which I think are the most competitive races in Texas at the state level, things will probably stay the same unless there's an unforeseen surge in voter turnout. So I want nothing more on election day or even an early vote than to hear you've run out of ballots. I want nothing more than that because that would mean people were voting. How many people can you take to vote? Can you take 10 people to vote? Can you remind people to get off their butts and go vote? That, yeah, it's Saturday in October, but I know you've got the fall festival and you've got the this and you got church on Sunday and you got that. It all slips away and all of a sudden election day's come and gone and they're like, oh, I forgot to vote. If voting is not the priority in your life, guess who voting is the priority for? Do you want to know? Old white people, 65 and up. Now I'm very near that, so I'm referring to myself as well. Everybody 65 and up, that's educated, well settled, I would say. They drive by the voting locations on Saturday to see if there's an election going on. But by the way, our state doesn't like Saturday elections anymore, so they're going to have to drive by on Tuesdays. We'll have one weekend of early vote, is that correct? One weekend of early vote, one. And then the election itself is on Tuesday. So that's what we tend to see, is that people that are voting tend to slant a certain direction because they're guaranteed to go vote. I know, no matter what, this 100,000 set of voters in Harris County are going to vote. They are going to be there come hell or high water. And they slant a certain direction. They slant slightly to the red. So I'm going to use the terms red and blue. And so we have the governor's race, and, you know, is choice more important to you than immigration? Is children in Texas more important to you than economics? These are very, very hard questions. And that's what this election is boiling down to. So for a while there, it looked like O'Rourke was creeping upward. But now Governor Abbott has just scored points all over the United States and Texas for putting migrants on buses and shipping them to other cities. His popularity has soared over this. By the way, 17 million of your Texas tax dollars doing that. Not your federal tax dollars that are already built into the system to handle the migrants. But this is the issue that has helped Abbott to soar in the last few weeks. Now, juvenile justice kids being sex trafficked, did anybody catch that? How about the kids in foster care who were in a rescue house for sex trafficked kids being sex trafficked by the foster caregivers? Yeah. Hey, compared to migrants, right? I'm just saying, what drives your vote? What drives your vote? And the Democrats around the United States are so excited because they think Roe v. Wade is driving the vote, the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I don't think so. I think when it comes down to people weighing economic issues versus social issues, often economic wins, right? And for some reason, the Democrats, though they've done more, I would say, the blues, they don't necessarily fare well with economic focus. So if I had to call the election today, I'm going to say Abbott, Patrick, Paxton. I struggle to pronounce his name because I personally don't like him very much. I know I'm supposed to be neutral, but he's one that really rubs me the wrong way. Primarily because of his legal issues and then his continuous lawsuits he files against the Biden administration. So, on the local level, we've got really two hotly contested races. Okay? Anybody tell me what they are? Harris County Judge, definitely the most hotly contested race in Texas, I think. She won by a percentage point in 2018, right? I mean, a percentage point. Nobody'd ever heard of her. She came out of the woodwork and won because of a Democratic sweep in Harris County. Now, no matter your opinion, she's sitting in a pretty good place, but the question about Harris County this year is voter turnout. So I'm going back to that same base issue. So she will carry with her, she's the lead of the local Democratic ticket. We have how many judicial races? Do y'all know? It's in the 50, 60 range of judicial races. on the ballot. So we no longer have straight ticket voting in Texas. So you can't just go in and vote Democrat or Republican and be done. You used to could do that. Probably all of us have had that opportunity. Well, that is not the case. So our folks from the elections office just told me there are 90 to, depending on where you live, between 90 and 100 races on the ballot. That means this machine that they're going to illustrate for you in a few minutes, do not quit, because Lina Hidalgo and Alexandra Mueller, they're at the bottom of that ballot. So who do you think's going to take all the time they need, punch all of those buttons, or twist or whatever, and get that done? Thank you. You're educated voters. A lot of people are going to go in, they're going to vote. We call it voter drop-off. It's a serious, serious issue in elections. And the further down the ballot you are, the worse it gets. So she's going to be towards the very end of the ballot. Now, I would say the second most contested race in Harris County is Commissioner Precinct 4, Jack Cagle versus Leslie Briones. And Commissioners Court redistricted that district to lean Democratic. Jack Cagle has a whole lot of money and also a fairly good reputation of balanced points of view, with the exception of a few things. And I'm going to give him this race this time, just this time. And I think in 4 years, he will not be able to hold that seat. And I told him this too, by the way. Yeah, you might squeak it out this time. And again, unless there's a voter surge of Democratic voters. Here's my problem. There's nobody with money to go work the streets, which is how Democrats get people to vote. They tend to put street teams, they knock on apartment doors. A lot of Democrats live in apartments. And so if you aren't talking to people in apartments, you don't get them out to vote. They have to be worked and reminded and told to go vote, encouraged. And organizations have to help with that and all of that. And I'm just not seeing much of that this year. And so the question is, Democrats have dominated Harris County now for about six to 8 years, a little bit flipping, but then in 2018 they won everything. So I'm the parent of a transgender young adult. And when my child was young and transitioned, we had to leave Houston to go for our name change and gender marker change because there were no judges in Harris County that would facilitate that because they were all Republican judges, okay? So now you can do it in Harris County. We had to go to San Antonio where there were Democratic judges that would facilitate everything so we could legally change our name and Social Security and all that stuff. So same with youth abortion requests. We can still allow a judge to authorize an abortion in case of certain circumstances. Again, we were not able to do that in Harris County previously. Now, because there have been Democratic judges in the family courts, you can do that. So, do these judicial races matter? Yeah, they do. Now, I got to tell you this, though. I vote for judges as individuals, and you can too. And if I don't know, I don't vote. And here's why. We've gotten some real crazy folks on the bench over the years with our straight ticket sweeps. And I mean, that's happened on both sides of the aisle. We've gotten some real problems in the courts. So I recommend, and I believe Cindy's got a resource sheet or something But there are multiple voters' guides available. There's the League of Women Voters Guide, and you can read, it's online, and you can read all about the judges. They fill out questionnaires. If they didn't respond, that tells you something right there. And that's a very reliable bipartisan source, or nonpartisan source. I pay attention to the Houston Bar Association's poll, though it can get slanted because it's driven by the attorneys that practice in their courts. But I'd rather know what the attorneys that practice in their courts think, right? So that's on your resource sheet too. And then there are various groups that meet with every one of these candidates, interview them, and determine your point of view. The Chronicle editorial board does that. I often pay attention, personally, I pay attention to the LGBT caucus endorsements because that's a group I have an affinity with due to my child. I look at the C Club, which stands for the Conservative Club. But I like to look at their endorsements in judicial races. So if someone gets LGBT and the C Club, I'm voting for them. You get my point? I try to look at good balance because with these judges, partisan labels are really not relevant. I mean, they're on a partisan ballot and it tells you they might do this or they might do that. But for the most part, how they run their courtroom boils down to what kind of judge they are. So I rely on those sources, and I recommend you do too. I hate to say it, but the professor in me says, do your homework before you go to vote, right? Do your homework. Learn about these candidates. Know what they stand for. Know that even if you don't disagree with them on absolutely everything, is there something you might agree with them on, right? Enough that you're willing to sacrifice this for that. You know, just know the people you're voting for. Because how many of us walk in the ballot and we get to those judges' races and you're like, oh, that's a woman versus a man, I'm voting for the woman. Well, that would be me. I am always going to vote for the woman, 99% of the time. I'm no longer alone. I used to be alone in that. But now, if you have a woman's name on the ballot, your odds of getting elected in a judicial position are like 5 points higher than if you're a male. Yeah. And if your name is Spanish, Latin sounding, if your name is African American sounding, you're more likely to get elected. So these are things that have drastically changed because I remember a certain member of Congress, her name is Sheila Jackson Lee, that ran for judge 3 times in Harris County and couldn't even get out of the Democratic primary because she was a black woman for the most part. So that was in the 80s. Now we've kind of swung to the point where we prefer candidates of color. So I share that with you to help you to process, research, and think, because we are hiring these people. And I think that's what voters forget. It's always them, those politicians, those people that care about politics. People say this to me all the time. You study it, you research it. I still can't name 5 judges. You know, I'm sorry, there's too many of them. But I do try to do my homework when it comes to the ballot. But how many of us are willing to put in that extra step? But isn't this the basic problem with American democracy at the moment? Okay, this is the basic problem. Nobody wants to put the time in. Most people don't even want to take the 10 or 15 minutes required to go vote, much less study who they're voting on prior to go do it. It's them. The core tenet of democracy and of our republic is that our government is representative, meaning we choose our government. It's not them. Them is us. And if we default to them, we're going to get what we deserve. Is that right? John F. Kennedy said it. We get the government we deserve. Yeah, we do. And right now, my apprehension about this 22, if I've dedicated my life to anything, it's getting people to vote. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, hate me, love me, I could care less. If I can drag your butt to the polling place, I'm going to do it, right? In fact, the last year of my dad's life, sum up with this. My dad, a die-hard Republican. Oh, thank the Lord, he died before the 2016 election. We'd have had a hard time with each other. We had a hard time with each other as it was. In his last years, he was very sick. And you know, when you have symptoms of having fainted or something, they ask you, who's the president, right? To see if your brain is working. So they would ask my dad, who's the president? And he'd say, oh, Bama Dama. And the doctors would look at me. I'd like, that's Obama. That's how he refers to him. So this is my dad. The state changed the voting rules. My dad is in a nursing home the last year of his life, and in the hospital every single month. And I take him to vote, and they said, oh, no, that voter registration won't work. If he's living in a nursing home now, you have to have a notarized letter from the nursing home to allow him to vote. So I called back then it was the county clerk's office, and I said, what is this crap? People in nursing homes can't vote without a certified letter. But I fought, and in fact, me and the nursing home director finally sorted it so that we got an election clerk to come out and manage them voting. Now, I wasn't going to let my dad die without voting. It just wasn't going to happen, even though we canceled each other out nearly 100%. So that should tell you something, though, right? It's about people participating in their democracy. It has become harder, and our next speakers will address that. And I want you to pay close attention to them. I asked Cindy to add them to the program because it's just not as easy as it was. So I'm going to wrap up with that. I'm going to be up to close because I've got a quote I want to share with everyone. So I'll do that when we're done with the how-tos.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Nancy. Our next speaker is Nadia Hakim. Nadia Hakim is a native Houstonian who serves her hometown as the Deputy Director of Communication with the Elections Office. Her mighty 6-person team provides Harris County election staff, voters, and stakeholders with the information and resources they need in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese so that they can confidently participate in our democracy. She is passionate about all things voters, books, and gardening. Please join me in welcoming Nadia Hakim.
Yes, Al is part of that mighty 6-person team and also fantastic with Excel spreadsheets. So bilingual and very organized. I'm just going to grab my binder from back here.
Well, then I'll start in Spanish. Bienvenidos. Hola, yo soy Al García y tengo aquí a Nadia Hakim. Yo soy la coordinadora comunitaria en español bilingüe y Nadia es la subdirectora de comunicaciones. Vamos a explicar cómo funcionan las máquinas de votación.
Yeah, thank you. So how many of y'all have voted in an election this year, in 2022? I want to take a temp check.
¿Cuánta gente ha votado en estas elecciones?
All right, excellent. Okay, and how many of you all voted by mail?
¿Y cuántas personas han votado por correo?
Excellent. So everyone else was in person then, okay? For those of you who voted by mail, did you have any issues in applying for a mail ballot? Okay, all right, we do have a couple of hands raised. Okay, so I just wanted to take a temp check because as Nancy alluded to, there have been some big changes with the implementation of Senate Bill 1 at the start of this year.
Ahora preguntamos si alguien tuvo retrasos o problemas votando por correo, ya que queremos saber, porque han habido muchos cambios, como lo mencionó Nancy, sobre cómo se vota por correo, ya que han entrado estos cambios por el proyecto de ley del Senado 1.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Al. So to kick things off, where we are currently, the number one thing you can do right at this very moment, check your voter registration status. So go to harrisvotes.com, type in your name, your address, and make sure that your name is exactly the way it's spelled on your identification, and make sure your address is up to date.
Lo primero que les pedimos a todos que hagan es que revisen su registro de votantes. Pueden ir a nuestro sitio web harrisvotes.com y revise su registro de votantes. Lo primordial es que revise que sí tenga su nombre correcto. El nombre tiene que ser exactamente como lo tiene deletrado en su identificación a la que va a llevar a los lugares de votación.
Perfect, thank you. And the second bit that we can do now, and we just completed what's called a logic and accuracy test. It's required by the state of Texas, by the Texas Election Code. And what our team does is we sit and we test every single combination of ballots by hand on machines that will actually be used in the November election.
Entonces, nosotros acabamos de terminar el proceso que es de pruebas de lógica y exactitud. Esto es requerido por el Código Electoral de Texas y lo que hacemos es que nosotros mismos, todos los empleados de la oficina electoral, probamos las máquinas de votación con cada combinación de la boleta para asegurarnos que no hayan errores.
So what this does is it ensures that every candidate in every precinct for every contest, they show up on the ballot exactly as they're supposed to, that when we select their name on the screen, there's no glitching, there's nothing happening with the programming. It's part of how we ensure that the process is secure, that the machines haven't been tampered with, that the programming is solid, and we have to test 100% accuracy before we can continue down the path for November.
Y lo que hacemos es que nos aseguramos que todos los nombres de todos los candidatos estén correctos, que la programación de cada una de las máquinas sea correcta, que no hayan errores, que no hayan faltas, que no se trabe por ninguna razón, ya que tenemos una boleta muy larga, y que se imprima todo correctamente, porque también nos queremos asegurar que nadie ha cambiado nada sobre las máquinas entre nosotros y cuando los ponemos en los lugares de votación para que voten.
So because we just completed that this past week, we have uploaded the sample ballots to harrisvotes.com. So how many of you have voted with sample ballots before? Raise your hand for me. Excellent.
Como acabamos de terminar las pruebas de lógica y exactitud, ahora por fin ya sacamos las boletas de muestra en nuestro sitio web y ahora acabamos de preguntar que quién ha visto su boleta de muestra o quién la imprentó antes para traerlas a los lugares de votación.
So a sample ballot is a really handy tool. You go to harrisvotes.com, you enter your address, and it pulls up all of the candidates, all of the contests that will be on your ballot. So you can print this out, you can take handwritten notes, you can bring that with you to the polls, and it turns it into an open book test.
Sí, para aquellos que no conozcan las boletas de muestra, lo que son es que es todo lo que vas a ver en tu boleta única dependiendo de tu precinto y tu distrito. Lo puedes imprimir, puedes escribir sobre ellas y las puedes llevar a tu lugar de votación y a la cabina, ya que no puedes llevar dispositivos electrónicos, pero puedes escribir lo que tú quieras, cualquier nota, cualquier cosa impresa, y se vuelve un examen de libro abierto, ya que todas las respuestas que tú necesites las puedes traer contigo.
Right, because as Nancy alluded to, we are going to have a 2-page ballot. It is a very long ballot. I can't imagine anyone could retain all of that information, right? So, like I said, print out your sample ballot, do your research, take your notes, because you're gonna have about 120 screens to go through, and you have to make it all the way to the end, right? So we have the longest ballot in the state of Texas, possibly in the country. So, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we just want y'all to be prepared for that.
Como mencionó Nancy, tenemos una de las boletas más largas del estado, si no es que del país. Así que les pedimos a todos que por favor impriman su boleta de muestra, que hagan notas, que indaguen, que hagan preguntas, que lo traigan, porque son más de 100 contiendas, más de 100 pantallas, las cuales tú tienes que elegir, las cuales tú tienes que pasar. Así que por favor indague. Nosotros no podemos cambiar qué es lo que aparece en la pantalla. Solamente queremos que todos estén informados y que tengan toda la información que necesiten para que voten exitosamente.
Okay, so you print out your sample ballot, you do your research, and now you're going to go cast a ballot. Are you going to vote by mail, or are you going to go in person? If you go in person, go to early voting. Highly recommend it. I don't know why people wait till election day. It is bananas. So if, let's say we have about 2.6 million registered voters in Harris County. We're right under that. And if we have something similar to the turnout in 2018, it would be about 50%, right? So you're looking at 1.3 million people coming out to vote. And let's say that they all wait till election day and they all want to go in person. We have 780 vote centers on election day. But even with that many vote centers, that would still average out to about 1,500 voters per location if we had that turnout and if they all waited. So this is why we say it's so important to go to early voting. We've got 2 weeks of early voting. We've got 99 early voting locations, and the judges are more likely to be able to help you, right? Because they won't be busy running around. There's probably not going to be a line. You can get the resources and answers you need. It's just a much less of a headache. So if you can vote early, please do. It starts October 24th, and we have handouts in the back that Cindy was so wonderful to print out for us that have the important dates for you.
Bueno, una vez que ella tiene su boleta de muestra, va a decidir. ¿Va a votar por correo o en persona? Si es que va a votar en persona, por favor, les recomendamos, les pedimos a todos que voten con anticipación. Votación anticipada empieza el 24 de octubre al 4 de noviembre. No entendemos por qué la gente va a votar el día de las elecciones, ya que, imagínense, tenemos 2.6 millones de votantes registrados en el condado de Texas, bueno, el condado de Harris, que es uno de los más grandes de Texas. Y el día de las votaciones, aunque tenemos 785 lugares de votación, van a haber más de 1.3 millones de votantes en cada locación, así que va a tener una gran espera. No los van a poder ayudar como requieren, así que les recomendamos a todos que vayan a votar con anticipación, ya que tenemos 99 lugares de votación anticipada. Cada juez presidente les va a poder ayudar, va a poder responder sus preguntas y cualquier problema que tenga con las máquinas de votación las podemos resolver con anticipación y sin preocupación, sin que haya fila, sin que nadie les moleste. Así que les pedimos a todos que por favor voten con anticipación.
Thanks, Al. All right. So if you do decide to vote in person, if you do decide to vote by mail, there have been significant changes. And these changes have led to an extraordinary number of ballots being rejected. So in the past, we had a percent of 1% that would be rejected as far as mail ballots. With the changes that came with Senate Bill 1, in March, we saw close to 20% of mail ballots be rejected. 20%, that's thousands and thousands that we had to toss out. It hurts, it really hurts. There's no other way to say it. So I'll let you bring in the bad news and then the remedy.
Bueno, entonces ahora vamos a hablar si va a votar por correo. Antes, si votaban por correo, el número de boletas rechazadas probablemente era 1%, una cantidad muy pequeña. Pero después de los cambios por el proyecto de ley del Senado 1, hemos visto, por ejemplo, en marzo, en las elecciones de marzo, se rechazaron más de 20% de las boletas, que eso son miles y miles de boletas, que eso también nos duele a nosotros. Nosotros queremos contar cada uno de los votos, pero si no se llenan todos los requisitos para cómo votar por correo correctamente, no podemos aceptar la boleta. Así que ahora vamos a explicar cómo evitar esos rechazos de boleta por correo.
Okay. So, and Cindy, again, was wonderful and printed out this handout that really highlights the changes that are tripping people up when it comes to filling out the application, filling out the actual mail ballot. So the big issue that we're seeing is that the application in section 1, it asks you for an identification number. So either your Texas driver's license number, your personal ID number that was issued by the DPS, or the last 4 digits of your social security number. Folks are filling out one, and it turns out that what we have on file is the other. And because it's not an exact match, we have to flag it for rejection. We can't accept it. And this is according to Senate Bill 1. So a lot of folks don't remember what the heck they registered with, 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And driver's license numbers, they change, right? And you have all these other things. So what we're telling folks is that when in doubt, fill both out. Fill in the last 4 digits of your social security number, fill in your identification number, and also provide us with an email address or a phone number, because we have a dedicated team that all they do is they make phone calls all day. If your application was flagged for rejection, they're gonna call you up and say, hey, we can't accept it, here's why, we're sending it back to you, we've highlighted where you need to change, look in your mailbox in the next 1 or 2 days, it's coming your way.
Bueno, entonces lo que recomendamos a todos los que van a votar por correo es que cuando haya la porción donde tiene que identificarse, hay 2 maneras de identificarse. Parte 1 le pide su número de identificación, o sea, credencial de elector o que sea su licencia de conducir. Y la segunda parte son los últimos 4 dígitos de su seguro social. Pero la única cosa es que tiene que ser exactamente el mismo número con el que se registró como votante. Pero imagínense, mucha gente se registró hace años, mucha gente no recuerda con qué se registró, y si no es el mismo número con el cual se registró, entonces puede marcar su boleta para ser rechazada. Lo que nosotros le recomendamos a todos es que llene ambas porciones para que no haya dudas y que también nos dé una manera de contactarlos, o sea, su teléfono o su correo electrónico, su email, ya que tenemos todo un equipo que lo único que hace es asegurarse de que podamos contactar a una persona que su boleta fue marcada para ser rechazada y que podamos corregir ese error de identificación.
Excellent. So if you apply to vote by mail, and the deadline is October 28th for this November election. So if you're going to vote by mail, if you plan on voting by mail, October 28th is when we have to physically have the application. So you can go to harrisvotes.com, print it from there. You can give us a call at 713-755-6965. The handout outside has our phone number on there as well. And you can request it, and they'll mail it to you. So those are your options for getting the mail ballot application. So let's say you apply, you succeed. This is what everything arrives in, okay? And this is what's tripping people up when returning the actual mail ballot. So you put your mail ballot inside of this green secrecy envelope, and then you put the green secrecy envelope inside of your mail carrier envelope, and then under the flap, before you seal it, you have to fill out your identification number yet once again. So a lot of folks, they're sealing it up, and they're signing it and sending it our way, or again, they're putting the wrong thing, and they're sending it, and it's not a match. And we have to flag it for rejection. So the earlier you send it to us, if there is an issue, because what happens is when it arrives, we rip off this flap so that we can see the identification number underneath, and we can reach out to you if there's an issue. Again, that team that does this all day, day in, day out, they'll give you a call and say, hey, we opened it up, we can't look at your ballot because it's in another envelope inside, and this is still sealed. And they'll say, we're sending it back to you, here's what you need to correct for it to count. And at that point, you can decide, well, yeah, I'll correct it, or forget this, I'm gonna go and vote in person, right? Which is what we saw a lot of people do.
Bueno, entonces, 2 partes. Primero, tiene que pedir una solicitud tiene que enviar su solicitud para recibir una boleta por correo. Esas solicitudes se pueden encontrar en nuestro sitio web harrisvotes.com o nos puede llamar al 713-755-6965. Una vez que tenga esa solicitud y la mande, recibirá su boleta por correo. Y ahora aquí estamos mostrando la boleta por correo. Hay 2 sobres. El primer sobre de privacidad verde y ese lo mete adentro del del sobre morado de envío. El sobre morado, de nuevo, le pide su identificación, o sea, el número de su licencia y los últimos 4 dígitos de su seguro social. De nuevo, mucha gente solamente sella el sobre y no ve esa parte. Y cuando lo abrimos de nuevo, no vemos su voto todavía, ya que está en el sobre verde de privacidad. Pero si vemos que no llenó el sobre morado de envío con su identificación correcta, nuestro equipo dedicado a asegurarse de que no se rechacen las boletas, se va a contactar con usted. Y por eso es importante tener su número de contacto para ver si podemos corregir ese error que cometió. Se lo mandamos de regreso y usted lo puede corregir. O si decide, esto ya es demasiado problema, ya no quiero votar por correo, puede llevar esa boleta al lugar de votación y votar en persona.
So you can decide to vote in person even if you applied for a mail ballot. You can bring the mail ballot to surrender it, or if you can't find it, you can still go to a polling location and say, I applied to vote by mail, I want to vote in person, and they'll have you vote provisionally, which is the same thing. It just means that at the tail end, you'll get a note or something of the sort that says, all right, you didn't turn in a mail ballot, your in-person vote is what counted. So it just adds a little flag to your actual ballot.
Precisamente. Entonces, en el caso en que usted decide no votar por correo e ir a votar en persona en un lugar de votación, puede llevar su boleta por correo y si no la lleva, entonces votará provisionalmente. Lo único que eso significa es que hará una nota sobre su votación nosotros. El equipo hará una nota sobre su boleta, que significa que debemos de doble checar, que no recibimos ninguna boleta por correo de usted y que en realidad votó en persona, para que no se cuente doble o que no confundamos su voto.
Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, right, the star of the show. So these are new machines. They have a paper trail. All counties in Texas are required to have something with a paper trail by 2026. I know for a lot of folks, this was a pain to get into in the March primaries, in the May elections, and all that sort of thing. But we're ahead of the curve. When everyone else is struggling to implement this in 2025, we'll have it down pat, right? Like, we'll be professionals when it comes to this.
Bueno, entonces ahora tenemos la estrella del programa, que son las máquinas de votación. Si esta es la primera vez que las nota, pues tal vez no sabe cómo se usan. Pero la razón por la cual cambiamos a estas nuevas máquinas es porque en 2026 el Estado de Texas y tal vez toda la nación requerirá que tengamos copias físicas de papel de todos los votos. Así que nosotros lo estamos empezando a implementar desde mucho antes. Así que ya seremos expertos todos cuando se implemente esta nueva ley. Así que solamente toma un poco de práctica y todos nos volveremos expertos.
Okay. So when you go and you check in and you hand your ID over, you will receive your access code just like you did in the past, and you'll receive 2 ballots, 2 pieces of ballot paper. So these are special pieces of paper. They're thermal sensitive, so we can't keep it in our car in Houston, right? Because then it won't be read. But you'll receive both, and it's going to be this size, and you're going to have 2. Like I said, it's the longest ballot in the state of Texas.
Entonces, cuando llegue al lugar de votación, después de mostrar su identificación, les darán un código de acceso y les darán 2 boletas de papel, también conocidas como papeletas. Serán de este tamaño exactamente. Son muy largas, ya que, como hemos mencionado antes, tenemos una de las boletas más largas de todo el estado de Texas, si no es que del país.
Okay. So this is the actual voting machine. I know they look exactly alike, but you have 2 steps that you need to go through. And the first machine is the actual voting machine. The second is the scan, and it will sit on a box just like this, and it will be towards the exit of the vote center, or the voting room, rather. All right, and there's somebody who's stationed there who's supposed to wave you off and say, hey, don't walk out with that. You need to come insert in here. Because what this is just a marking device. It's a tablet that's touch screen, and it prints it out for you. It doesn't store anything on this machine. this scan is what records your vote. It records it on a thumb drive, it records it in a built-in memory, and it also deposits your printed record in the box below. So this would be locked up and sealed up with a secure number, and we have a chain of custody that we have to go through for every single seal. But this is where your paper ballot is stored. So at the end of every election, we actually have to do something called a partial manual count, where the Secretary of State will send us, hey, all the governor's races in precinct 004. Go in and count it by hand, and it needs to match exactly what you reported digitally. So it's like a mini audit that we are required by Texas Election Code to do after every single election. So it's just part of the checks and balances. And that's where the paper comes in handy too, right? So we've got 3 different ways to verify your vote.
Entonces, para votar en persona son 2 pasos, son las 2 máquinas. Primero es la máquina donde selecciona todas sus elecciones. Así que esta parte nada más es para seleccionar, solo imprime su boleta y no está guardando el voto. Donde se guarda el voto es en la segunda parte, que es el escáner. Tiene que escanear y en realidad ahí guarda su voto 3 veces. 1, el papel. 2, tenemos una memoria que la podemos sacar y ahí hacemos el conteo central. Y parte 3 es la memoria adentro del escáner. Así que después de las elecciones, en realidad tenemos un conteo parcial, manual. Así que ahí es donde viene la parte donde tenemos las boletas en papel y las boletas electrónicas. Nos aseguramos que el monto que tenemos electrónicamente es igual al monto que tenemos en papel. Y por cualquier razón, tal vez a veces podemos sacar también la memoria que está adentro del escáner.
Okay. So the key with these is to insert the sheets of paper one at a time. All right? So you would walk up to it, and these are actually going to have guides that are installed on them. This particular demonstration machine doesn't have it, but the guides are to help prevent the paper jams, which a lot of folks experienced back in March. So you go in and you feed the paper in, and it will grab it. And it's natural for it to hang out like that. And then you'll start printing and making you'll start making your choices. And then when it prints the first sheet of paper at the end, that's when you'll be prompted to enter your second sheet after the first sheet is finished. Okay, so you just hold on to that and keep tight. Okay?
Entonces lo que hace es que llega a la máquina y en realidad el día de las elecciones habrá una guía para que no se le trabe el papel, pero lo que tiene que hacer es insertar un papel a la vez. Primero un papel y es completamente normal que esté salido. Una vez que seleccione todo lo que quiere seleccionar, todos los candidatos y todas las propuestas que quiera, cuando empieza a imprimir, le va a pedir que inserte el segundo papel y ahí es cuando insertará el segundo papel.
All right. So once you're done marking your choices and printing out both sheets of paper, review it. All right, because sometimes, you tap the wrong thing. You didn't mean to select that candidate or for or against. You have up until 2 more times to correct your ballot. So you can get it 100% the way that you want it. So if you see, actually, yeah, my finger did slip, tell an election worker, they'll get you new paper, and then you can correct your mistakes.
Entonces, lo que le pedimos es que una vez que ya tenga sus elecciones impresas, por favor, revíselas. Si nota que hay algún error, no puede pedir a un trabajador electoral que si puede tener un papel nuevo y elegir todo de nuevo para que no tenga ningún error.
All right, so you verify that both pages look exactly the way that you need it to. You go to the scan, and then it will prompt you. It says ready for use. Then you go ahead and you feed it in just like you did here, one at a time. All right, so when it accepts the first sheet of paper, if it's been scanned in correctly, the American flag will come up on the screen and they'll thank you for voting. So then you wait for this screen to come up again, the ready for use, and that's when you'll enter your second sheet of paper.
Entonces, una vez que va al escáner con ya sus boletas corregidas, listas, mete un papel a la vez. Verá la bandera americana, que significa que ya aceptó su voto, y luego cuando ve la pantalla de nuevo que dice listo para ser usado, inserta el segundo papel.
Okay, and I just wanted to talk about some features and resources that are available to you. With these machines, all the ballots come in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. You can select the language on the screen, vote in English, vote in Spanish, whatever you need, and you're good to go. Let's say you speak Arabic or you need American Sign Language or something like this. We have what's called video remote interpretation, and we can provide you with an iPad, and there's an interpreter on the other side who will get you the information you need to vote in your language that you're most comfortable with. So if you go during early voting, all 99 early vote locations have that iPad. On election day, the iPad is usually traveling between 4 locations that are clustered together. We just don't have the capacity for 780 locations. But I want you all to know that that is an option, the video remote interpretation.
Ahora les queremos informar de algunas opciones de asistencia que tienen. Por ejemplo, todas las máquinas de votación y los escáneres están en 4 lenguajes. Cuando va a votar, puede seleccionar entre inglés, español, vietnamita y chino. También puede seleccionar el tamaño de las letras y también qué tan brillante quiere la pantalla. Si necesita otro lenguaje, por ejemplo, árabe, o si necesita lenguaje de señas americano, lo puede pedir. Por eso, de nuevo, le recomendamos que vaya a votar con anticipación, ya que tenemos intérpretes de video virtuales, remotos, que les pueden ayudar con todo eso. Y si va el día de las votaciones, el día de las elecciones, ese día esa opción estará dividida en 4 locaciones, así que tal vez no lo tenga el momento en que usted llegue al lugar de votación, pero los 99 lugares de votación anticipada sí tendrán esa opción.
Okay. And also, let's say the type is too small for you, or the contrast, there's not enough contrast, you have a hard time reading the screen. You can change the contrast to where the background is darker, the typeface shows up in a lighter color. You can adjust the size of the text if you need to. If that's still an issue and you can't read the screen, we provide headphones so that it reads you the ballot. You can bring your own headphones if these aren't fashionable enough for you. Let's say you really just have a hard time reading. You can bring a helper with you to the polling location. They do have to take an oath saying that they are just reading verbatim what's on the screen for you. And that they are not coercing your vote. They're not forcing you to go to a polling location and vote against your will. But you can bring a helper, and that includes for translation or just someone to read the screen, because I believe it's 1 in every 4 adults in Harris County, they're actually functionally illiterate. So we like to let folks know what their options are so that they can confidently come and make their choices.
Otras opciones que tiene, también tenemos interfaces táctiles que les pueden ayudar, y también puede oír las opciones con audífonos. También puede traer sus propios audífonos si no les gusta los que les proveemos. Y también puede traer un asistente. No tiene que ser familia, pero lo único que tiene que ser es firmar un juramento que dice que no está afectando o no le está dirigiendo por quién votar. Y esa persona le puede ayudar con traducción, le puede ayudar a leer las opciones, ya que también sabemos que 1 en cada 4 adultos en el condado de Harris es analfabeta, pero por cualquier razón puede llevar a alguien y también puede elegir la opción que sea más fácil para votar para usted.
So in addition to that, I know we've only got 5 minutes here. If you get to a polling location and let's say you need not drive-through voting, Senate Bill 1 banned that. So we no longer have drive-through voting, but there still is a curbside option. So let's say you have mobility issues, you can't enter a polling location without possibly injuring yourself or those around you. You qualify for curbside voting, and there will be a blue buzzer outside of every location. You go and you ring that buzzer, and someone will come out to help you. It does take a little bit longer than what drive-through voting was because there's a lot of back and forth. So a person has to actually go out, get your identification from you, go back in, check you in that way, take a tablet out of the machines and put it in a portable device with handles, bring it out to you, have you vote, bring it back in to scan your papers. It's a lot of back and forth. So a lot of people say, well, I thought drive-through voting was banned. That's when we had all of the machines out and we were able to process you faster than you can order a McFlurry. So we do have curbside voting, that's an option. You are never required to prove why you are eligible for curbside voting. We have heard some horrific reports of, I went to go vote and I asked for curbside voting and the election worker said, "You look fine to me." That is unacceptable. You are never required to prove what your disability is.
Otra opción que tiene es también votación por la acera. Antes solíamos tener votación por el auto, que eso de nuevo fue cancelado por el proyecto de ley de Senado 1, pero aún así tenemos votación en la acera, que cada locación debería de tener esa opción y nadie debería de revisar si es elegible para esa opción, o sea, una discapacidad, eso no importa, puede votar. Lo único es que tiene que revisar que vea el timbre azul y traerán una tableta ahí a su carro donde puede votar. Tal vez sea un poco lento ya que tienen que traer tienen que revisar su identificación, volver por la tableta, traerla, que usted elija cualquier opción que quiera y luego llevar sus boletas impresas a escanear adentro del lugar de votación. Así que puede tardar un poco y sí es menos rápido que la opción de votación por el carro, pero aún así es una muy buena opción y nadie debería de rechazarlo o no dejarle votar por votación en la acera.
Excellent. And the last bit, because this is going to be such a long ballot, I know some folks have issues with standing for long periods of time and things like this. You can ask for an accessibility booth, right? So these are a little bit wider. If you do have a walker with a cushion on it where you can sit, ask for one of these. That way you can park right under it. Also, you can ask for a chair. You can tell them, I would love an accessibility booth. I can't stand for long periods of time. I'm going to need a chair, and they can do that for you. And then you have this little remote control, and they'll adjust the screen for you, and you can sit and vote with this rather than having to reach over and touch the screen. So there are all sorts of ways that we can accommodate you. Again, go during early voting. That way you can ask for these accommodations and get your questions answered. Hey, I forgot, how do I insert the papers in? Is it both at once? Election workers are a lot less frenzied during early voting, and you can really get the help and the time that you need.
Otra opción que tiene también es pedir una cabina accesible, o sea, va a ser más ancha y va a poder caber una silla de ruedas o una silla si es lo que necesita. Le puede pedir una silla a cualquier trabajador electoral en cualquier lugar de votación, pero de nuevo, les pedimos que vayan con anticipación, ya que van a estar mucho menos atareados los empleados electorales y les van a poder proporcionar todo lo que necesitan. También tienen una interfaz táctil para que no tengan que tocar la pantalla, sino es que no pueden alcanzar hasta ese nivel. Así que cualquier cosa que necesiten, de nuevo, vayan con anticipación, pero por cualquier cosa deberían de pedir y les deberían de proporcionar lo que necesiten para votar con éxito.
Okay. Cool. And that's really all I have time for, but I do believe we're going to take questions. Is that right, Cindy? Absolutely. Excellent, thank you.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay. Great job. I have questions. No. So, we've heard how to vote. It's gotten harder. It is harder. And that ballot, standing for that long a time, it can be challenging. But I'm telling you, please don't do one sheet and quit. Please. Because a lot of people will do that. And they'll forget to feed their second sheet in, and, then your vote doesn't count. So I wanted to leave you with a thought. First, I wanted to correct my quote from JFK. It's, we, the people, will get the government we deserve, be it good or bad, right? But my favorite quote is from Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s when he said, "The ship of democracy will ultimately sink by the mutiny of those on board." And right now we're having mutiny. People are just not voting. So, you know, I teach women in politics at U of H. I call it her story instead of his story, you know, because most people haven't heard of the hers I teach about. And, you know, people don't know what people went through for the right to vote. Women went to jail, starved, went on hunger protests so that they could have the right to vote. And that's just women. Every single group that's followed has been through war, death, protest, everything else as we've expanded the vote. Now we're contracting the vote and making it more difficult. And I want to mention, they didn't, but I want to, and I want you all to address it, that poll workers will be at the polls this year with the point of intimidating voters. They're being trained. There's a training program here in Texas. They're poll watchers. I'm sorry, not poll workers. They're poll watchers. And they could come up and they can say, I don't believe you're a citizen. How can you prove it to me? They can actually do that to voters right now. And so they can ask people if they're felons. This can be very intimidating to voters. So this is what we're facing in our attempt to try to increase the vote. We're facing all kinds of challenges. So all I can do is say, you get the government you deserve. So you get out there, you take people to the polls, do whatever you can to help people vote. Please. Good.
No, I've got goosebumps. I'm sorry.
Can I kick you off with a question before they kick it to the audience? I'm not sure I heard the exact definition of who can apply for a mail ballot.
Oh, no, yeah, you're right. I did not indicate who can apply for a mail ballot. So if you're 65 or older, you can apply for a mail ballot. If you're not going to be in Harris County during the early vote period and election day, you can apply for a mail ballot. If you have a disability or illness, you can apply. If you're expected to give birth within 3 weeks of the election, you can apply. If you're going to be confined in jail, you can apply. Jail is not the same thing as prison. I want to make that distinction. They haven't had their rights revoked, so yeah, they can apply for a mail ballot as well. And I believe that is it. I feel like I'm getting pop quizzed. Just, I mean, that's what all these talks are, but just especially you, Nancy.
Los puntos de elegibilidad para cualquier persona que solicite la votación por correo. Así que tiene que tener 65 años de edad o más, puede tener alguna discapacidad, si va a estar viajando o no va a estar dentro del condado de Harris durante el día de las elecciones y durante la votación anticipada, si espera dar a luz en las 3 semanas antes o después de el día de las elecciones, o si está confinado en la cárcel, que es diferente que estar en prisión, ya que en la cárcel todavía no le han quitado sus derechos. Y eso es todo.
At this time, we are open to entertaining some questions. And for those of you who are on live stream, if you want to write into the comment section or communicate in that way, we can take those questions as well. So I guess the floor is open. You can come up to the microphone here if you're in-house, and you can communicate with Barbara, and Barbara can speak into the microphone after you.
Oh, really quick, would you like for Al to translate in real time the questions as they're coming in, or
If we
is
have any
Beatrice-
Spanish speakers here in the room, yes.
Got it.
Otherwise, Barbara is bilingual, so she can translate it in their question into English for us.
Oh, beautiful.
We also have our live translation back there that for everyone who's on calling in, and that can be on live stream, it can be in here.
Y'all
So
got it.
We're set,
Yeah.
but it's complicated. So thank you for waiting. So please, what is your question?
Okay, I have two. With you saying that there are people trained to intimidate, when you go to the polls. I've seen this happen where people have notes for the people that they want to vote for, and they come in with their notes and they're told they can't bring it in. How do we get around that? As long as it's just written on paper, that we're allowed to bring it in, because I've seen it where they have like the flyers and they have it. We can't bring those in, but if it's on a piece of paper, am I right?
So you can bring in a textbook if you want to, as long as it's printed and tangible. It's folks who are trying to bring in like tablets or their cell phone or a laptop, because those can be considered recording devices. You're not supposed to have that on within 100 feet of the entrance. You know how they have those 100-foot markers?
So written.
Yeah, so written or printed notes are totally fine. If an election worker is telling you that and they insist on that, and this is why we tell people to vote early, you can say, you know what, I know what my rights are, I'm gonna go somewhere else. And you're not stuck on election day having to go through that.
Okay, and thank you. My second question is, I always hear, do your research before you go. What's the ideal location to look for that information? Where do you?
I'll say the Houston Chronicle, the League of Women Voters, and I mentioned several others, and I believe that Cindy's got a resource list to find information on candidates in the back. You can also go to both parties' websites. They'll have detailed information on their candidates.
Okay.
So one of the things I shared is if I see a judicial candidate endorsed by the Gay Lesbian Political Caucus
I wrote that down.
and the Conservative Club, that's somebody I'm going to vote for, because clearly their judicial perspective crosses party lines, right? So there's a lot of resources, and I think Cindy's got sheets in the back you can pick up.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, those are great questions.
Could you please use Barbara's, she was using the other handheld?
Five.
There.
Five. There we go. Okay, we have a question from Facebook. Rebecca is asking, are there any restrictions on who can take how many people to vote?
So technically, no. But they can only drive them to the polling place. They can't go in and stand with them when they vote, correct?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you the super, super safe answer as being someone from the elections office and possibly, face charges if I say the wrong thing. Senate Bill 1 has stated that you can't transport more than 7 people to a polling location. If you do, you have to fill out an oath saying that you aren't coercing anybody, that you aren't being paid, I believe, or something of the sorts, which gets really tricky because you have folks in senior residential areas or part of the community with disabilities that they rely on drivers to take them to places. So there's a lot of gray area there. So I usually tell people 6 or less, just to be super, super safe.
I don't think I knew that. New deal, so we can't put them on buses after church and take them to, no?
Well, I'm not sure if it pertains to the parking lot or within it, so that's why I always tell people.
Gotcha.
Drop them off down the street, have them
Drop
walk a
them
little
off
bit.
down the street and walk, okay.
Gee, I didn't know vote
Did anybody
trafficking
tell
was a
Second
thing.
Baptist that?
I'll let you tell them, Nancy.
Any other questions in house or online?
Yes, sir.
There's,
For a point of clarification, if you don't complete all 100,
I'm sorry, could you use the microphone? This will help us do
I've
the,
got a big voice, I usually don't.
you do, but for translation
Sure,
purposes,
absolutely.
thank you so much.
Just as a point of clarification, I think that you said if you don't complete all 120 ridiculous choices on this ballot, your vote doesn't count?
No. That's not right.
So
Okay, because I thought you said that if you don't put everything through, then your vote was, you just wasted your time. Your vote doesn't count.
So, what oftentimes happens is people will start off strong, and then towards the end, they say, "Oh, I do not have the mental capacity," and they'll just start skipping, because you have the option of skipping at the bottom, and when it prints out all of your options to review it, it will just say no selection in those areas, and then they'll go and they'll scan both sheets of paper. So as long as it makes it to the scan, your vote is counted. But it's important for people to realize it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And steadily select all the choices that you feel comfortable in selecting, as opposed to just hitting skip because you've gotten tired.
But I think, Nadia, what he's asking, let's just say all I care about is governor. And I go in and I put my one sheet through, I vote for governor, I come over here and I run my one sheet through. Does that one sheet count?
So you can't even print until you've hit all the way through the screens. So you have to get to the point where you print it so that you can scan it so that your vote can count.
And what sort of time frame are you estimating that takes? Because if I'm trying to vote on my lunch hour, do I have to plan for 20 minutes in the voting booth? Or, just ballpark it?
I'd say it probably depends on how much you've prepared yourself. If you're going to sit there and read all those names for the first time, it might take you 20 minutes, 20 or even longer, depending on how you read.
But we've tested it out with, all right, if I spend about 15 seconds on each one, things like this, it shouldn't take you longer than 3-4 minutes to actually go from the controller, getting there, inserting your first sheet. It only takes a few minutes.
That will work for me even.
So like Nancy said, it depends on how much you've done your homework, right?
Great. Thank you.
And how many races he skipped.
So to add to that, though, he mentioned he's going on his lunch break. So it is a federal law that your employer has to give you 1 hour to go vote. If you say, hey, I've got to go cast a ballot, they've got to give you an hour in addition to your lunch break for you to be able to cast a ballot. You might not get paid, but that's your absolute right. You can request that extra time. So, and if you have employees, please keep that in mind and really encourage your employees to go and vote.
Barbara?
We have two questions. The first one from Facebook. Jeannie wants to know, for early voting, can I still go to any polling place?
Oh, absolutely. So we have 99 early voting locations throughout Harris County for early vote, so from October 24th to November 4th. Even November 3rd, the polls are open late, so they're open until 10 p.m. If you are registered to vote in Harris County, you can make use of any of those locations, and same thing on Election Day with any of the 780 plus locations.
Another question?
La siguiente es en español. Susi quiere saber si se registró para votar hace 10 años. Todavía, ¿cuánto tiempo le sirve la registración?
So Susie is asking that she registered to vote 10 years ago. For how much longer is that registration still applicable?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Susie. So let me rewind. So every 2 years, every even year, we'll send out those little registration cards to your address that you registered to vote with. All right, so we'll send those out, and if we receive any of those back with the yellow sticker that says undeliverable, so let's say you've moved, you forgot to update your address, the person who lives there now says, this isn't me, sends it back, that actually gives us a flag that, okay, maybe the person isn't there any longer. So we'll send what's called an address confirmation notice to the person, again, to that same address, just to double check, hey, your registration card bounced back. We want to double check that you're still at this address. If we don't hear a response to that address confirmation notice, then you're taking off the voter rolls in 2 years.
Ok, entonces Susi, es una respuesta un poco larga. Lo que pasa es que cada 2 años se mandan nuevos registros de votantes o certificados, ¿no? A cada dirección, a la dirección a la que tú te registraste o la que tenemos archivada. Si por cualquier razón se regresa o si no se pudo entregar a esa dirección, se etiqueta por el servicio postal de que no fue entregada. Eso nos marca que tal vez no es la dirección correcta. Entonces, tratamos de mandar un aviso de confirmación de dirección. Si tu aviso de confirmación de dirección no es completado en 2 años, se cancela tu registro de votante. Y no mandamos ningún aviso sobre eso. Así que, por favor, te recomendamos que revises tu registro de votante. Y si no te has mudado, tal vez todavía siga vigente tu registro de votante, pero es importante que lo revises, porque por cualquier cosa tal vez se cancela y no te avisamos de eso.
And can't you check it? Can't you check your voter reg status
Yes,
online?
exactly. So if you go to harrisvotes.com or even give us a call if you're not too computer savvy, we can check your registration for you, or you can check online. Online, if you do see, it will actually say in suspense. And that's saying that we tried to mail you your registration card and it was flagged. So you can correct it online, you can call our office, you can fill out a sheet. There are a number of ways to rectify it.
Sí, para rectificar esto, si quieres revisar tu registro de votante, lo puedes hacer en línea en harrisvotes.com, nos puedes llamar al 713-755-6965 o lo puedes hacer en línea a través de la Secretaría del Estado de Texas, pero eso solamente si hubo cambio de dirección y si sigue vigente tu registro de votante. Si está en suspenso tal vez porque te mudaste y no recibiste el aviso de confirmación de dirección, entonces ahí dirá en línea que está en suspenso y puedes repararlo o corregirlo en línea o por teléfono.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have a bunch of folks from across the region that attend this church. So we have people from Brazoria County and whatever is the Woodlands and Fort Bend. And so all those places that are beyond sort of Harris County. And so the question I have is sort of, what does Senate Bill 1 call out that has to be common or true for every county? Like, what could people expect in those other counties? I know you're Harris, but I was kind of like, okay, what are the common elements that they should expect? And does every county, like we have Harris votes, is there Fort Bend votes and is there Brazoria votes, or can you address any of that?
Of course. So every election office is going to have their own website, their own phone number to call. Every website should have sample ballots posted. They're required by Texas election code to have sample ballots posted within, I believe, 40 days, 45 days out from the election. So you do have a website or a phone number which can get you the same resources as voters in Harris County would. As far as Senate Bill 1, that applies to all the counties in Texas. So a lot of the other counties like Bexar County, Fort Worth, they were experiencing the same issues with the mail ballot rejections and everything else. Because, yeah, it applies to everyone in Texas. So we're not special. I think we're pretty special, but you get what I'm saying. But the law applies to everyone.
Facebook question.
Yes, Barbara.
Bárbara?
John wants to know, what's the difference on checking harrisvotes.com versus going to another entity that is asking me for my personal email address to check registration?
Oh, to check registration. So you can check with whatever county election office that you live in, or you can check with the Secretary of State's website as well. And it's going to be the same.
But it should not require your email.
Yeah, it's not done by email. I think they probably meant to say just your address. Yeah, so it would be your address or your name. Good catch, Nancy.
Question for people with college students. They maybe are from Harris County, but they're off at Texas A&M or UT Austin, or maybe out of state. What guidelines do you have for them?
That's a really good question. And we've had a lot of churches, synagogues, mosques who have tried to reach out to us and say, we want to get 100 mail ballot applications for our students who are out at college. Can you send them to us? We cannot send out mail ballot applications en masse like that. So again, they can print it out offline. They can request it. They can call our office and request it. College students take advantage of mail ballots all the time, and they should. They have a right to. So they have to apply just like everyone else. They would just indicate that they're not going to be in the county during that early vote period and election day. So a lot of people will look at it because it asks for the exact dates that you'll be traveling or you won't be out, that you won't be inside of Harris County. You know, put the semester. You know, if they're not going to come home till Christmas, put Christmas. You use your best guess, right? So, but yeah, they're totally eligible for mail ballots.
Bárbara?
Otra pregunta en español. Ana dice, ¿cómo puedo prepararme de antemano para ir a votar leyendo la información en español? ¿Dónde la puedo encontrar para no perder 2 horas de almuerzo?
So she is asking, where can I go to find information beforehand for the ballot in Spanish so that I don't lose 2 hours at lunch?
I could say, La Voz, most of your Spanish TV and radio stations are posting ballots, but also your own website has the ballot in Spanish. But looking for broader information, the League of Women Voters also has theirs in the 4 languages. So there's multiple options, I think.
Hay varias opciones, entonces está La Voz, hay varias estaciones de televisión y radio locales que tienen la información. Nuestro sitio web, harrisvotes.com, tiene la boleta en los 4 lenguajes, incluyendo español, y también la Liga de las Mujeres Votantes también tiene la información sobre las boletas y todos los candidatos en 4 lenguajes, incluyendo español.
And ¿Qué onda?
Y también la revista ¿Qué onda? Tiene esa información.
He talked to me about that
Like,
recently.
you didn't
Gracias.
tell me you spoke Spanish.
I don't.
Are there other questions? Anything else? Nothing else online? Anyone else in the room? Well, we are right at the hour. This has been amazing and wonderful and depressing and hard to hear and
That's me. I'm the
infuriating.
depressing part.
So you've really met your goals, and you've really helped us to understand the nuances of the system and what needs to be, what our purpose and our process can be. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for bringing all of this to us. Our registrars left, but if you're still needing to register to vote, you can still do that, and I think it's October 10th, isn't it?
October 11th,
October 11th.
is the deadline to register
Are
to
there
vote.
still cards here?
I have some short form.
Yes, I believe we
yeah,
do have
so-
that. So if you haven't done that yet, you can still do that today. Let's see. If you're interested in knowing more about our future efforts and our spiritually principled activism, there are sign-up sheets on the table right on the other side of the glass at the back of the room. You'll see it in the lobby. I just want to thank Unity's Healing the Heart of America and Unity in the Community, Elise Coffey, Stephanie Foy, Jean Ladding, Jaime de la Isla, and Cindy Wigglesworth for their vision and their work to offer this forum this afternoon, and to Unity's Spanish-speaking ministry, Barbara Carcamo and Beatriz Schreiber for their support, and of course, our wonderful presenters, Nadia Hakim,
Great job.
Nancy Sims, thank you so much. And Al, I don't know anything else about your name. And Al Garcia, did she do a wonderful job? Whether you know Spanish or not, she did a wonderful job.
Bravo.
Thank you so much for your presence here. Really appreciate what you brought to us. This was really helpful.
We'll take our time breaking these down. So if y'all want to see the prompts on when it tells you to enter at the second page and all that, we can just have a group of you kind of huddle around. That way you don't have to sit there and go through the actual 120 screens yourself, but you can know what to expect. Yeah. Yeah, you can really test the patience, right? And then we'll show you what it looks like to insert both sheets in. Also, I've got a sheet with all the QR codes to our community meetings. So we have some more community meetings that we host monthly. So we have, I guess the last hurrah is our October community meetings. And those are in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese. And then we have one that's tailored to the African American community, the general community, and things like this. So if you're interested, bring your phone up and we can get you signed up.